Hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to Harmony's Hobby Happy Space. I am Harmony and this is my happy space. And as you can see, I have got my hands full with an exciting new series that I'm going to bring to you guys. This is going to be a minis series. And yeah, I thought I would be able to display these better, but I can't because I just can't hold them all. So let me put these down and let me tell you what we're going to do. So I have been working on this idea for a while now, where I wanted to create a whole bunch of just little minis, and I wanted them to be like, initially the base pattern is the same across all of them with just little adjustments and pieces to make each one their own unique individual plushie. And I was trying to decide of like how many I wanted to do. So was it going to be like a 3-in-1 pattern, a 5-in-1 pattern? I wanted it to be pretty massive and like just a really fun journey to be on, and I decided to go with 10. So this is a 10-in-1 pattern that I'm going to be releasing. I am working on writing up the written pattern, which will be linked down below in the video if you want to just get all of them right off the bat, because the YouTube videos are going to be done in individually, and I'm just going to release them all separately. So this is going to be a series, and it's going to take me a little while to record and edit and get all of these out to you guys on YouTube as far as the tutorial is concerned. But the written pattern I will have linked down below. You can just go and purchase that if you want to just get them all right away. So which plushies are we going to be crocheting? Well, let me show you. I was trying to decide how I wanted to do them and release them, and I just decided that the easiest thing is just to go in alphabetical order. So we are going to start the series off with Boo. So we have this little guy because I grew up with Super Mario Brothers on the Super Nintendo, and so I had to include this just because of the nostalgia for me. So we've got Boo. Then we're going to do Bubble from the Amazing Digital Circus. Of course, I had to represent. So he's really, really easy. You will be needing some safety eyes for this guy. There's not very many safety eyes that I use. I use a lot of felting, but you will need some safety eyes for this guy. But of course, all of the details will come with each individual video. Then I wanted to do something fun and just different and not really like a character. So I have an F-bomb here because the F word is my favorite word, and I just thought that this was a really cool idea. Then we are going to have Ghastly. Of course, we're going to have Gengar. Now, Gengar is probably one of the more tedious ones. There is a lot of pieces to get all of his spikes and everything done. And then, of course, all of the needle felting. Then we have Jigglypuff, which also is pretty detailed. A lot of moving parts on Jigglypuff, but I mean, come on. Look, she is adorable. Isn't she? It's adorable. Then we have a little Junimo from Stardew Valley. Very simple, very easy. You'll need some safety eyes for this one as well. Then, of course, you can't have a mini series without the OG Kirby. So we've got Kirby. We have a Digimon, Nyoromon, and I absolutely love this one. I think it is just adorable. And last but certainly not least, and I'm hoping that a lot of people know who this is, but we have Suika. This little thing is just adorable. Also a little bit detailed with all of the felting and stuff that we do, but this is all the same exact pattern for the body, and you can see the sizes vary greatly based on the yarn that you use. So, just keep that in mind. They might not all be the same size, and that's okay. So yeah, it just depends on the hook that you use and the yarn that you use. But that is going to be our little minis series 10-in-1 pattern, and we're going to start off today with Boo. So of course you're going to need your white yarn. I use Bernat Blanket, and I use a 7mm hook. Now, my crochet style is definitely a little bit different than some, which, we're all unique. My crochet style doesn't use the full hook like length, and so my 7mm tends to be a lot smaller than some other 7mm. So just use what you're comfortable with, use what you like to work with and what you know. But we're going to be using the white yarn, your hook, you're going to need stuffing, you're going to need a very, very little bit of pink yarn for the tongue, and then you're going to need some felting stuff. So I use a mixture of felt sheets and loose felt. I believe for the black we use the felt sheet, and for the white, we use the loose whites. But you can use whatever you want. You can glue it on, you can needle felt it on, which is what I do, and I will do my best to show you my process in the video and give as much detail and like how to as I can. But I highly recommend that you try needle felting if you haven't, because I think it takes the plushies to a whole nother level. In my opinion, I think it looks fantastic. But that's pretty much all we need for this guy. Of course, you need your scissors, your stitch markers, and all of that stuff. Very easy pattern. We're going to be doing just magic ring, single crochet, increase, decrease, and I think for the arms, we just turn our work once. But very easy. But regardless, we're going to get into this tutorial. So are you guys ready to go on this journey with me and create your 10 minis? I hope so. So let's get started. All right, so are you guys ready to make this cutie? I'm going to go ahead and set him off to the side. And we are going to get started with just a couple of things that you're going to need. I have just a regular piece of paper here with a pencil. When I start to do my felting at the end, I usually like to just draw out my shapes and cut them out first on paper before I go to the felt. That way I don't ruin a whole bunch of felt. So I'm going to set that off to the side. Of course, we have our needle felting needle. We also have some pins that I like to have on hand to hold the felt in place when we do get to the felting. So that all comes a little bit later. Then, of course, you have your felt. I'm using a black sheet, and then I have some loose white felt, so that's going to go over there for later as well. And then, of course, for the plushie, we are going to need some stuffing on hand. Of course, more than this, but you want to just keep your stuffing on hand. We are going to have some scissors, our hook. Again, I'm using a 7mm hook, but please feel free to use whichever size that you're comfortable using. I have a couple of different sizes of sewing needles. I really prefer to use the bigger one, but I do have the smaller one on hand just in case. I'm going to set those off to the side. A couple of stitch markers just because you never know when one's going to break on you, so I like to have a couple on hand. We're going to have just a little bit of pink yarn here. This was like a Temu yarn or even maybe a Dollar Tree yarn. No, I don't think Dollar Tree actually carries the silky one. So this is a chenille yarn. It's very, very thin and silky, but this is what we're going to use for the tongue. You don't need a whole lot, and honestly, any pink that you have will be fine. So I'm going to set that off to the side. And then we're going to have our white yarn for the rest of the body, the arms and the tail. Now, I want to say that I had used Bernat Blanket, which looking at this one, I think it's Bernat Blanket, but it could also be Sweet Snuggles Light. I don't remember. I took off the label, and so I apologize. I don't know, but honestly, either one of those would work. Or if you have like, you know, a Premier or Elise or whatever, as long as you have a white, little bit fluffier yarn, that's going to work just fine for you. So I am going to get some yarn pulled here, and we are going to get started. So the first thing that we are going to work on is, of course, the body. So what we are going to do is we are going to start with a magic ring. So if you don't know how to do a magic ring, or it's called a magic circle, you can absolutely do the chain 2 method. It is completely up to you. I just do the magic ring. So we are going to start with 10 single crochets into the magic ring. So what I like to do when I get started is I keep them pretty loose, so that way we can pull the ring closed and we don't have too much of an issue with the yarn. Luckily, this yarn does not really catch or break really easily, so you can pull it pretty tight. But I'm going to just do a couple of stitches into the magic ring. I'm going to go ahead and put in, that was 3. I'm going to do 4, and then I'm going to just give it a little bit of a tug and slowly start to tighten up and make this ring a little bit smaller. So that was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take this tail and pull that really tight and close the magic ring. Now I'm going to put my stitch marker at the end of the row. I like to keep my stitch marker at the end of the row. You can absolutely do it in the first stitch of the new row, whatever you want to do. So after we do the 10 single crochets in the magic ring, we're going to increase all the way around. So we're going to do 10 increases, and that's going to give us 20 stitches. So row 2 is 10 increases. So I'm just going to get my hook into that first stitch here. Make sure that I get both of those loops. And of course, an increase is just 1 single crochet, and then in the same stitch, another single crochet. So 2 single crochets in each one. So this is 3 and 4. I'm just going to speed this up so we can get over to the end. Okay, so I made it all the way back around. This is where I started. So this is my stitch marker here, and that's my last stitch in the round. So I need to finish off with my last set of increases. So that would make 19 and 20. And I'm going to go ahead and replace my stitch marker there in that last 20th stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this tail again just a little bit tighter, because as I was crocheting with my thumb, I could feel that it was a little bit loose, which you're going to feel that when you do more single crochets to start, because it's, it's bigger, there's more yarn in the hole, and so you just make sure that you are pulling that tight. Now for round 3, we're just going to continue with our increases, but this time we're going to do 1 single crochet and an increase all the way around. So what that means is we are just going to do 1 single crochet, and then in the next stitch, in stitch 2, we're going to do our increase. So that's 2 and 3. So now we're going to just repeat that all the way around. So a single crochet, that's 4, and an increase, 5 and 6. So I am going to just repeat this all the way around, and we're going to end with 30 stitches at the end of round 3. So I'm going to continue to do this off camera, and I will meet you back when we are done with round 3. All right, I just finished round 3, so I'm going to replace my stitch marker at the end of that row. So now after 3 rows, we should have 30 stitches. And round number 4, we're going to continue to increase, but this is going to be our last round of increases. And we're just going to continue with the same type of pattern. We're going to do 2 single crochets and an increase. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. So there's 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and an increase. That makes 3 and 4. And we're just going to repeat that sequence all the way around. So then 5, 6, and an increase, 4, 7, and 8. Now at the end of round 4, you should have 40 stitches all the way around. So I'm going to do this off camera, and then I will meet you back. All right, I just finished our 4th round. So we have 40 stitches all the way around. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat that row. So we're just going to do 40 single crochets all the way around, and we're going to keep 40 for 6 rows. Now, how I like to do repeat rows is I like to keep my stitch marker exactly where it is and just crochet over it and just keep going for 6 rounds. And I will show you why I like to do that when we have reached the 6 rounds. So I am going to just do these next 6 rows off camera. Again, it's just a single crochet all the way around, 40 stitches for 6 rows, and I will meet you back here when we are on round number 11. So rounds 5 through 10, again, 40 single crochets all the way around. So just single crochet in each stitch, and I will meet you back here, and I will show you what I mean and why I like to leave my stitch marker exactly where it is versus removing it every single row and trying to remember how many rows I've done, because I find that that's more difficult for me. So anyways, I will meet you back here after these 6 rows. Okay, I have just finished round number 10. So we had 6 rows of 40 single crochets. And the reason why I told you I like to leave my stitch marker down here at the bottom is because I can easily count how many rows by just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, because those stitches always land on top of each other, slightly leaning right, but it's very easy to count. I know it might be a little bit harder to see on the fluffy yarn, and then of course, you know, the white yarn on the white background, but I'm hoping that you can at least see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that stitch marker and bring it up to the last stitch in row number 10. And from here, we're just going to start our decreases. And we are going to decrease in the same way that we increased. So in this next row, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets and an increase. So of course, did I say an increase? I meant a decrease. 2 single crochets and a decrease. So a decrease is, so there's just 1, 2, and then the decrease is making 2 stitches into 1. So you'll put your hook through and pull up a loop, put your hook through the next one, pull up a loop, and pull through all 3. And that is a decrease. And we are just going to repeat that all the way around, and then we'll go from 40 stitches around to 30. So again, there's 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and a decrease is you're just combining 2 and making them into 1. Why can't I get, there it goes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and repeat this pattern all the way around. I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll meet you back around when we have finished row number 11. I am at the end of row number 11, so I have one final decrease to do. So I'm going to remove that stitch marker and do my last decrease, and then replace my stitch marker right there. Now, I don't do invisible decreases all that often. I find that they do work better when you start to get towards the top of your or like the end of your project where you're closing it up and you need to get it like really, really tight. The invisible decreases work better there, so you don't have as many holes. But on the body of my plushies, I find that I don't really need invisible decreases. A decrease works just fine. And also with yarn like this, where you can't even really see the detail of every stitch like as clearly, I don't see any issues with using a regular decrease. But again, that is completely up to you. So use whichever decrease you are comfortable with and you like in your work. So for the next round, we're doing round 12, and we're going to do 1 single crochet and a decrease all the way around and end with 20 stitches. So that's 1 single crochet and a decrease. And we're just going to repeat that same pattern all the way around. 1 single crochet and a decrease. And once again, I'm going to do this off camera. That way you're not just waiting for me and watching me crochet. So I will meet you back at the end of round 12. I just finished round number 12, and you can see we are getting really close to finishing our little body. So from this last row, row 13, we're just going to do decreases all the way around. But we also do need to start stuffing the body. So I'm going to put down a couple of decreases, and then I will start putting some stuffing in there. So let's see, how many do I want to do? I think I'm going to just do 4. And then put some stuffing in there. All right, so I am like the stuffing queen. I love to stuff my plushies like very densely. I just find that it holds over better. Stuffing can get a little bit more like flat as time goes on. So I really like to put a lot of stuffing in my plushies for the most part. I mean, there's sometimes when it's not needed or doesn't work well with the design, but for the most part, especially something like this where it's just a round little body, we are going to stuff lots of stuffing in there. Really push it out to the sides. Okay, before I add any more, I'm going to just go ahead and make this hole a little bit smaller. So I'm going to continue with my decreases. And this is the point where you might want to start using some invisible decreases. If you're noticing that you are having a lot of spaces in between your stitches and holes are forming, go ahead and do some invisible decreases if you would like. I'm going to continue this with just regular decreases for now. I am pulling that tail tight after every decrease, and I'm not really seeing any holes in my plushie. So just play it by ear and do what you feel your plushie needs, and again, what you're comfortable with. And before we close it up, I am going to add a little bit more stuffing again, just to get it nice and firm. Decrease. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker, pull this tail tight, and do another decrease there. Now that is going to be the end of round 13. And this is where we'll start to really close it off. But before we do that, I'm going to add a little bit more stuffing in there. Really push it out up towards the sides here. I like a firm plushie. Okay, so this hole you could probably sew closed, but I think it's still a little bit too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a couple more decreases just to close that hole up a little bit. You don't have to do this, but again, I find that it just makes everything a little bit easier when you get that hole a little bit smaller. Okay, and I could see here I did start to get some holes in my decreases, so I'm actually going to take those last 2 out and do some invisible decreases. Now see, this is a lot of this I play by ear because every plushie is a little bit different and it depends on the yarn. So an invisible decrease, instead of going through both of the loops, what you're going to do is you're just going to hook that first loop, the front loop only, and then you're going to just twist your hook into the next one and pull up that first loop only as well. And then you're going to pull through those first 2 and then yarn over and pull through like a single crochet. And that is an invisible decrease. So I'm going to use my hook to pull up that first loop, flip it around and hook the first loop again. Then I'm going to pull through those first 2 and then yarn over, single crochet that, and that is your invisible decrease.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw one more in there, and then I'm going to fasten off and leave a tail to sew the rest of this closed. And pull that through. Okay, so I'm going to cut a little bit of a tail and pull my hook through. Go ahead and pull that tight. And then now I'm going to get my needle. And again, I really like this big one. It just works for me. It's easier to get the yarn through. The eye is a little bit bigger, and I just like that I can really pull this through very easily. So to sew it closed, we're just going to get that first loop just like we did with invisible decreases, the top loop only, and we're just going to go around and pull that closed by using those top loops only. Okay, one more there. Okay, and then I like to just weave the rest of this tail kind of in and out. If I see any holes or any stitches that look like they might need a little bit more of like a filling, I just kind of go back through them just to fill them out a little bit. And again, with yarn like this, you really don't have to, worry too much about anything being seen, like the stitches being different or anything like that, the yarn being pulled through. Okay, and then when I get towards the end here, I'm just going to stuff that tail back inside of the plushie. A bit much. Okay, and there we have it. I like to kind of shape it a little bit. Okay, and there we go. That is our body for our boo. So as you can see, the previous boo that I did, this is smaller, ever so slightly smaller. Oh, let me lift this up. You probably can't tell. This is ever so slightly smaller, and it's probably just because, like I said, I'm almost positive this was Bernat and then this is Sweet Snuggles Light, but it's perfectly fine. This is a mini plushie, and so as long as you're happy with your mini, the size really doesn't matter. And it will vary. Like I said, the pattern stays the same. The size will vary based on the yarn that you use. So now we are going to set the body aside, and we will continue on with the arms. Now you're going to need to make 2 of these arms. I already have one of them completed, just for the time sake of this video. So I have one, but I'm going to show you how to do the other one. So let me put this back down here for us. And we are going to start with a magic ring, and we're going to do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. So there's, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go ahead and get that tail and pull this shut a little bit. 5 and 6. Okay, I'm going to put my stitch marker in the 6th stitch there, and then I'm going to really pull this tail and close up the circle. Okay, so what we're going to do now for round number 2 is we're just going to do a single crochet in each stitch around. So we're going to do 6 single crochets. I'm going to get my hook into that first stitch there, and we're just going to do a single crochet. There's 1, 2. I'm just going to crochet these with you since these are not big pieces. It won't take very long. 4, 5, and into where the stitch marker is, that will make 6. Okay, so I'm going to replace my stitch marker. I did pull out my hook because from here you want to make sure that you flip your work into the right side. So just flip that inside out if you haven't already, or if you didn't while you were crocheting. So that way you are working with the right side out. Okay, and so for round number 3, we're going to do 1 single crochet and an increase for 9 stitches. So 1 single crochet and an increase. So that's 2 and 3. 1 single crochet is 4 and an increase. 5 and 6. And then 1 single crochet, 7, and an increase where the stitch marker is 8 and 9. Okay, we'll place our stitch marker there. For round number 4, we're going to do 2 single crochets and an increase for 12 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and an increase, 3 and 4, and then 2, there's 5, 6, and then an increase, 7 and 8, and then our last one, we've got 9, 10, and an increase where the stitch marker is for 11 and 12. Okay, now we're going to leave our stitch marker off because now we're going to be turning our work. So what I'm going to do here to make this transition not so drastic is I'm going to do a slip stitch in the next stitch. So a slip stitch is you just put your hook through the next stitch and pull the yarn through and just keep going through the loop on your hook. And that is a slip stitch. So from here, we're going to turn our work and we're going to work back across the row we just did. So we're not going to stitch into that slip stitch. We're just going to go into the next one. So we're going to do 6 single crochets back across and get in there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we are going to do one more slip stitch. So we're going to put our hook through, pull the yarn through and through the hook, the loop on the hook. And then now we're going to leave a little bit of a tail because we're going to sew these onto the body. And you can just pull your hook through and pull that tight, and that is your arm. And of course, like I said, you want to make 2 arms. So you can just pause this, go back and repeat this for 2. We're going to go ahead and set this aside, and we need to do the tail. Now the tail is pretty much the same thing as the arm, except for it's just going to be a little bit bigger. So we are going to, of course, start with a magic ring, and we're going to do essentially the same thing for the arm for the first 4. So the first 4 that we did. So we're going to do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to pull this tail. 5 and 6. And we'll go ahead and put our stitch marker in there. Pull that tight. And again, we're just going to do 6 single crochets all the way around. So, get my hook in there. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and where the stitch marker is, it's going to be 6. Now again, make sure that if you crochet like me and it was folding in on you, that we just want to make sure that we flip that to the right side. Okay, put our stitch marker back there. And this next row is row 3, and we're going to do the 1 single crochet and an increase for 9 stitches. So we've got 1 and increase. Oh, I pulled that tail there. Okay, so there's 2, 3, and then 1 single crochet for 4, and then an increase, 5 and 6, and then 1 single crochet, and where the stitch marker is will be our last increase, and that will be 8 and 9. Okay, put the stitch marker back, and now same thing as the arm, we're doing 2 single crochets and an increase, and we're going to have 12 stitches. So there's 1, 2, increase for 3 and 4, and 2, 5, 6, and an increase, 7 and 8, and then we have 9, 10, and where the stitch marker is our increase, and that will be 11 and 12. Okay, so round 5, this is where it differs from the arm, is we're just going to continue the increases for one more round. So we're going to do 3 single crochets and an increase, and we are going to end with 15 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and an increase. That's 4 and 5. And then we do 3, so there's 6, 7, 8, and an increase, 9 and 10. And then 3 more, 11, 12, 13, and our final increase where the stitch marker is for 14 and 15. And we're going to leave our stitch marker off because we're going to do similar to what we did with the arms where we turned our work and went back. So from here, we're going to do a slip stitch. So again, put your hook through, pull your yarn up and through the loop on the hook. Then we're going to turn our work, and we're going to be working through the back, the inside of the tail, and we're going to do 8 single crochets. So again, don't crochet into your slip stitch. You're just going to go into that first one, and we're going to do 8 single crochets across. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so now we're going to do a slip stitch in the next stitch. And we are going to turn our work again. So now we're working back on the right side of the plushie. So we're no longer working from the inside out, we're working the right way. Skipping that slip stitch, we're just going to go back across for another 8. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That last one's giving me a hard time. There we go. Okay, and then you can see here how like drastic this change is right here. So what I'm going to do to get this to look better is I'm going to do a decrease, but the decrease is going to be including the side, this previous row we did right here, and the base. So I'm going to put my hook into the row that's just one below the one I just worked. I'm going to put my hook right there into that stitch, and I'm going to pull up a loop. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch on the base, and I'm going to put my hook there and pull up a loop, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 and make that decrease. And then and then one more slip stitch, pull that tight, one more slip stitch, and then we're going to fasten off. So leave a little bit of a tail to sew with, because we're going to have to sew this onto the body. And then go ahead and pull that tight, and that's your tail. So your arms and your tail are very similar, except one is just a little bit bigger. So now we are going to work on assembling our body. So let me move this over, get all this out of the way here, and I'm going to lift this up just a bit. There we go. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is we'll start with the arms. And so we will get our yarn through the needle there. And you will be stuffing the arms. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of stuffing and get started with that in there. Okay, so honestly, where you start doesn't really matter because it's a round plushie. So wherever you put your arm, you can match up the other one, depending on where the other one you sewed it on. So what we want to do is we want to take the part where we did the extra little piece, that's going to become the bottom of the arm, because we want our arms to point upwards. So if you're looking at this guy here, see how the arms come at an upward angle? And this is really hard to get on. Okay. Can't get it. There we go. This comes at an upward angle for you right here like this. So that's where you want to put the bottom and make it, an upward angle. So we're going to do it literally just in the middle of the body. So you're just going to want to just kind of eyeball it exactly in the middle of the body on the side. And then we're just going to go ahead and just sew this on. Trying to do this on camera for you guys is not always the easiest feat. Okay, now once you've gone all the way around and you've got your first arm in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this extra piece here, I'm going to bring it down to the bottom, and then that's where I'm going to put the other tail for my second arm so that I can tie them off together and put them back into the body. So there's our first arm, which is always the easiest of the two. I'm going to stuff the other arm. Don't forget to add your stuffing. Okay, so now this is where it gets a little more challenging because you have to try to get the other arm symmetrical with the first. And I will be the first to tell you that I still, to this day, struggle with sewing things on symmetrically. It might be because I am quite the perfectionist and this being slightly off just really bothers me. But alas, this is what we deal with when we are artists and creatives, right? So just kind of looking at the top of it, I want to make sure that it lines up with the sides. We are going to need to put our tail in the back. So if you want to move your arms, more forward, you can. Um, I like to keep mine pretty far back on the sides of the body. But I think I'm happy with the way that looks right there. So I am going to attempt not to move it and get it sewn on right there. Okay, so I went all the way around. Um, I am happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and take this tail and pull it through the same place on the bottom of the plushie where I put the other one, and pull that through. And then we're just going to tie these off. So we're going to throw in some knots to hold it all in place. 2 or 3 is fine. Then we're going to cut these short and stuff them back into the body. Okay. And that is the arms. So now we are going to do the tail. So go ahead and grab your tail, get some stuffing put in there. I will probably add a little bit of stuffing just right before I close it up. But this also can get a little difficult because you need to make sure that you line up your tail in the middle of your arms on the back. So again, this piece here where we went back and forth, that's going to become the bottom of the tail so that the tail comes up a little bit. So let's see here, right at the back, right in the middle of your arms. Let me pull this forward here. So looking at it from the top down, just making sure that it looks like it's lined up perfectly. And then we're going to attempt to sew that in place without moving it. Okay, before I sew it completely closed, I'm going to get some more stuffing in there, really shape the back of it here. Okay, and my final stitches. Okay, now because I don't have anything to tie this off with, I'm going to just pull it through and just do a couple of stitches with it. Just kind of weave it in and out just to really secure it in place. That way this tail is not going anywhere. Make sure that you kind of put it through the stuffing inside so it gets a little bit caught up and more secure. And then just kind of go back and forth with the tail to get it secure until you know it is not going anywhere. Now I am pretty confident with that, so I'm going to go ahead and just snip off most of that and put that back into body. There we go. So there we have our boo. We've got the arms and the tail on and everything looks good from the side, from the front. Actually, my tail is like really, really at an angle, but it's fine. And I probably could have put it a little bit lower, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with the way that looks overall. Let me lift this up a little bit for you guys. Yeah, so now we just need to work on the felting, which the felting is going to take some time. So let me get all of my stuff situated, and then I will be right back to show you how we're going to get the face all done. Okay, so when it comes to felting, the way that I like to do it is definitely in steps. I don't like to just go straight to felting onto the plushie without some sort of template, just because I am not that good at eyeballing and making everything symmetrical and the same size. So I always like to start by roughly sketching out what I want, and then I'm going to use my little sketch and hold it up to the plushie and make sure that it's about the size that I need, for the face and everything, making sure that that's going to work for me. So once I have a rough outline of what I want, I will then cut this out of regular paper and then use those to hold on against my felt and cut out the shape of this onto my felt. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and then I'll come back and show you guys what I have when I'm done and what the next steps look like. Okay, once you have your pieces cut out, we are going to pin them in place on the face. And then we'll go from there. So, let's see here. Just get them in a rough estimate. Okay. Now, the eyebrows and the eyes are so much easier to work with when you do them separately and not all in one piece. So eyebrows are first. And then make sure that those line up about the same distance apart from the arms, in line with the tail. And then the eyes. The eyes will overlap underneath, or either underneath or on top of the eyebrows. So I'm going to show those up there a little bit. And I'm not sure that I like the size of those eyes. I think they might be a little bit too big. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just trim these down a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pin this underneath here. And pin that one underneath there. Then of course we'll still have the white pupils to felt on, but that's kind of where we're sitting right now, and I think that that looks pretty good. So from here, we do need to still crochet the tongue. Now I always do this first and get this pinned on the face. That way I can then work around the tongue. So we are going to keep this all pinned, and then we're going to just set it aside for now. And we are going to grab our pink yarn. And I actually need to grab a smaller hook because this yarn is really thin and a 7 is just not going to work. Oh no, got a knot going on here. There we go. So let me go grab another hook. I'll be right back. Okay, so I just grabbed a 4.5 for this yarn. Now I do apologize. I don't have the tongue written down on my pattern because a lot of times I just freehand stuff. And so all of my plushies will always be just a little bit different because I freehand a lot of things, but we're just gonna go with the flow on the tongue, okay? So we are going to leave ourselves a little bit of a tail here in the beginning because we're gonna use this to sew it on. So we're going to go ahead and do I forget what this is called, a slip knot. And we're going to start with just chaining a couple. So I'm going to say 6. Let's see how that looks. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, I'm going to go with 5. because my plushie is a little bit smaller this time around. And so you can just like take your tongue and hold it up to your plushie and see kind of how that looks. So I'm going to stick with 5. So what we're going to do now after we chain is we are going to go back down the chain, but we are going to round it off in front for the tongue. So we are going to start by skipping the first chain on the hook and going into that second one, and we are going to increase. So let's just do 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, and then we're just going to continue down the chain, 1 single crochet. That makes 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we did 1 increase at the top and then 1 single crochet all the way down the chain. And we had 5. So we did an increase and then we did 1, 2, 3 single crochets. And so from here, we're just going to turn our work and we're going to go back around the whole thing. So we're just basically going to crochet all the way around, and that's going to be it for the tongue. But of course, we need to make this round. So we're going to start by going back into the same stitch we just did. We're not skipping anything. We're just going to turn and go right back into that stitch. So that's going to be 1. Then we're going to do 2. 3. Oh, and I did not grab both loops on that one. So make sure you grab both loops. That's 3. And now on this 4th one, we're going to do an increase. 1 and 2. Now at the very, very top of our tongue, we're going to do another increase. 1 and 2. And then of course on the side, to keep rounding it out, we're going to do 1 more increase. Okay. And then we're going to finish off with single crochets. So that's going to be 1, 2, and 3. And that's going to be our tongue. That's it. That's all we do for the tongue. So I'm going to, again, leave a little bit of a tail. I'm going to pull that through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this tail we just cut, the one that we were working with, and I'm going to kind of just weave it through the base of the tongue, the back of the tongue, all the way over to the other side. That way we have a tail on both sides of the tongue, because we're just going to insert these into the body and, hook it onto the body, sew it onto the body, and then tie it off. So what we need to do is we are going to need to cut a piece of this felt to allow us to crochet to sew the tongue in there, and then we're going to needle felt around the tongue. So scissors, I'm going to go ahead and take this off, and I'm going to make it towards the bottom, because remember, we need to leave space for the teeth up here on top. We need space for the teeth, so cut it towards the bottom, but you want to make sure that you leave a little bit of felt to needle underneath the tongue so it looks like it's coming from inside. So we are just going to bend this about here, and okay. If I could, I usually work with bigger scissors, but I don't know why I pulled my little ones out. Okay. All right, so there we have our little hole. So let's go ahead and put this back in place. Where did I put it? Okay, and now we're just going to get our needle and get one of the tails here. And we are going to put it through the hole and sew that on. I'm going to hook it through the middle of the tongue and pull that back through the bottom of the body. Okay. And now we get the other tail from the other side and put that through here and pull it up on the other side of the hole there. And I'm going to pull it through. Make sure that you get it through the same, your tails through the same hole so you can tie them off and push them back through the body. Pull that tight. Okay, so now we have the tongue in place, and then we can just needle felt around it. And it gives it that really great, tongue out 3D effect. So I'm just going to tie this off. And we are almost done, guys. Now we just got the needling part of the felting. Or glue, if you're using glue, that's fine too. Okay. My bigger one in, push those through. Make sure that you push these really deep in there since it's a different color. You don't want that pink to come through. All right, so there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle, my felting needle, and I'm going to start with the mouth because that's always a little bit easier. I'm going to keep those pins in place. And what I'm going to do is hold it as securely as possible. And then I'm just going to start jamming this thing. And I just stab, 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 stab. This part is very cathartic because you just get to stab away at felt, and feel free to stab everywhere on the face. These little holes that you make with the needle are not going to matter, I promise you. So just stab it as much as you can, because the more places that you can get, the more secure it's going to be. So just stab, stab, stab away at the face of this, like the big, big open spots. And then under the tongue, stab, stab, stab. And then once you have it, it's not going anywhere, you can go ahead and remove your pins. And then I'm going to continue on with just getting these secured. So I'm going to go ahead and hold these eyebrows in place, and I'm going to start with where the eye connects and stab that eye down with the eyebrow. Just stab, stab, stab. Really focus on the eyebrow here, and then we can shape the eye once we get that all secure. You want to make sure there is no gap between the eye and the eyebrow. They do connect. Okay, stab, stab. Okay, now I'm going to take my corners out of the eyebrow and I'm going to tilt this up because it needs to have a bit of a curve here. So make sure that you tilt that up and you don't just needle them on straight. They do need to come up. Be careful not to poke yourself. I cannot tell you how many times I have just stabbed myself with this needle on accident and it hurts. And then you don't want to risk getting, blood on your plushie. So go ahead and hold that up at an angle. And secure that down in place. And then now I'm going to go ahead and remove the pins on the eyes. That way I can really work with them and adjust them. So make sure that they are up there and don't want them to move on me. Okay, see how this one, there's a little bit of a gap. So want to make sure that you get that up there. And you can use your needle to push it and really get it where you want it to go. Okay, and you can see this one looks a lot smaller than this one, but that's okay because we can shape it. So it's not the end of the world. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start shaping this eye, and I'm going to really work on the edges here. And you kind of want to hit them at an angle to really manipulate the shape of the felt. I mean, you can't change it that much because it is a sheet that we cut out, but you can still manipulate it a bit. And we're just stabbing, stabbing, stabbing all the way around. Okay, we're also going to manipulate this one a little bit and shape the brow. We really want this to come down a bit. We really want this point to show. Oh, I'm going to get the inside here. And the good thing about needle felting is if you do happen to make like a really big mistake, or you really just do not like the placement or what you've done, you can pull it out. It is very, very secure, but you can move it and start over again. Versus if you glue, once that glues down on your yarn, you're pretty much stuck with wherever you put it. So that's another reason why I do really like the needle felting. Okay, almost done with this part. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the way that that looks. I'm going to go ahead and work on getting the mouth completed and just really working on those edges and getting those edges secured down. Okay, so there's that. And now you are more than welcome to continue to use felting sheets, or you can use the loose felt. I just find that for smaller pieces, it's really hard to get the felt, the sheets done, versus the loose felt you can really just manipulate. So we're going to do that. So I'm just going to take a piece of the loose here. I'm going to start in the middle, I think, with the middle, oops, with the middle tooth. And I'm just going to start there and just work. This can be a little bit of a pain to work with all the little loose pieces, but once you get used to it, it's really good. Now I'm going to do a rough shape first and just make sure I'm getting my teeth down. Okay. And the smaller amounts of loose felt that you work with, the harder it is. But I usually like to start with just a very small amount to get the shape down. And then I'll go in with like a bigger, thicker piece for the shaping and the color and saturation. Once you're happy with the overall like shape of everything and the placement of everything, then you can go in and really start putting in the felt thicker to get the desired look you're wanting as far as the color. You want to, of course, make sure that you can't see any of the black through the white, and then you want to make sure you keep your shape. So, of course, this is all very tedious and takes a long time, but this is what we're going to do for the teeth and also for the pupils. So just follow this same process, and I'm going to do the rest of this off camera, and I will meet you back when I am done. And ta-da! Once you have finished felting the teeth and the eyes, you're done. You have your very own mini boo, and this is 1 in 10 tutorials that I will be bringing to you. Again, a 10-in-1 variety plushie minis pattern. So if you like this, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next part 2 in this series of minis. Next time we will be working on bubble. So I hope that you have enjoyed this little tutorial, that you love your little mini that you created, and I can't wait to see you for the next one.